I, female, 26, think my boyfriend, male, 28, is different after his grandmother's funeral. Is this just grief? Throwaway account because he sometimes goes on Reddit. I've been dating Ryan, male, 28, for about a year and a half now, and things were honestly really good up until about 3 weeks ago. I mean, he always had his occasional moody days, who doesn't? But I never thought much of it because everyone has ups and downs, right? Ryan was basically raised by his grandmother after his parents divorced when he was 8. They said horrible things about each other and used him as a messenger. His grandmother stepped in and became his main support person, and they were incredibly close. I met her several times before she passed, and she was amazing. Last Christmas, she even shared some of her family recipes with me. My own parents divorced when I was 12, and my dad basically checked out afterwards. I think that's probably why I try so hard in relationships now. We met at my friend Jess's housewarming party about a year and a half ago. We both got talking because we noticed each other taking pictures of the skyline view from her balcony. We're both into photography, and it just clicked from there. Things moved pretty fast, but in a good way. So his grandmother passed away 3 weeks ago. It wasn't totally unexpected. She was 87 and had been having health issues, but Ryan is absolutely devastated. I've been trying to be supportive and understanding, but things have gotten weird. Like, I made his grandmother's casserole for the family gathering after the funeral using the recipe she'd given me, thinking it would be nice. Ryan seemed okay with it at first, but later that night, he suddenly accused me of trying to show off while he was grieving. I was completely blindsided. During the funeral, I tried to stay quietly in the background and just be supportive. I rubbed his back when he got emotional. But the next day, he said I seemed cold and embarrassed of his family at the service. I was literally just trying to be respectful. Then last weekend, we were helping clean out his grandmother's house, and I found her recipe box. I offered to help organize it. He snapped at me that I was taking over like always, which made no sense because he usually appreciates when I help organize things. But the worst incident happened during the funeral reception. After about an hour of the reception, I was feeling really anxious and overwhelmed. The funeral homeroom was packed with people. It was hot, and I'd been making small talk with relatives for ages. Ryan was talking with his uncle, so I just quietly slipped outside onto the porch for some fresh air. I was out there maybe 5 minutes when Ryan came out and asked if I was having fun in this really cold voice. I explained I just needed a moment because the room was really crowded and I was feeling anxious. He nodded, but seemed really distant for the rest of the reception. I thought maybe he was just processing his grief. But later that night in the car, he suddenly brought it up again and said I was making his grandmother's funeral about my anxiety issues, and that was selfish. I tried to explain that I wasn't making it about me. I just needed 5 minutes of air and came right back in. He interrupted me and said I was making excuses again. I ended up apologizing just to keep the peace. And then the weirdest thing happened. He immediately switched back to normal Ryan, like nothing had happened. We stopped for ice cream on the way home, and he was joking around like everything was fine. This has become a pattern now. Normal things I do, like checking my phone during dinner, I was responding to my boss, or running a few minutes late to meet him. There was literally an accident on the highway. Suddenly get twisted into me being disrespectful or selfish. And anytime I try to explain, he calls them excuses or says I'm playing the victim. He's even started bringing up my parents' divorce, saying I don't understand family loyalty because of how I grew up. That really hurt because I've always been loyal to him and supportive of his family. And the thing is, he expects me to apologize immediately without any discussion. And I've started doing it just to avoid problems. But then I find myself overthinking everything I say or do around him now. Something else that's bothering me. At the funeral, his cousin, who I've only met once before, made this weird comment to me. She said, "So you're still around? That's longer than the last one made it." I didn't think much about it at the time, but now I'm wondering what that meant. I understand that grief affects different people in different ways. I get that he's processing a huge loss and might not be himself right now. But at the same time, I'm worried that maybe these behaviors were always there and I just didn't see them. Or maybe the stress has revealed parts of his personality that weren't obvious before. I've tried talking to a couple friends about it. My friend Melissa said I should just be more understanding because grief makes people act weird sometimes. But my other friend Taylor told me I need to be careful and set boundaries. I really don't know what to do. Is this normal grief that will eventually pass? Should I just keep being patient and supportive? Or should I be concerned about our relationship long term? Oh, and something else. His grandmother left him her vintage camera collection in her will, which meant so much to him since photography was their special thing together. But he hasn't been able to even look at them since she passed. Edit. Some people are asking if there were any red flags before this. Honestly, not really. He could get moody sometimes, but it usually blew over quickly. Although, now that I think about it, he did get weirdly upset once when I was like 15 minutes late to dinner at his place. I had texted to let him know. He didn't talk much during dinner, and when I asked what was wrong, he said nothing, but then made comments about respect and valuing other people's time. But that blew over by the next day, so I didn't think much of it. Edit 2. To clarify about the recipe thing, his grandmother specifically gave me her recipes and said she wanted me to have them. She told me Ryan loves these dishes but has no interest in learning to cook them, so it wasn't like I was taking something that wasn't offered to me. And when I made the casserole, his aunt and uncle both thanked me and said it was just like how she used to make it. Ryan seemed fine about it until we got home. Now for the first update. Okay, so first of all, I want to thank everyone who commented on my last post. It's been about 2 weeks since I posted. After reading all your comments, I decided to try having a calm, adult conversation with Ryan about everything. A lot of you suggested using "I feel" statements and making sure to acknowledge his grief while also expressing my concerns. That seemed totally reasonable. I picked what I thought was a good time. We were just hanging out at my apartment last week, watching some random show on Netflix. He seemed to be in an okay mood. Not great, but not angry or anything. I waited until after dinner, when we were just relaxing on the couch. I started by telling him I wanted to talk about how we've been communicating lately and that I felt things had been tense between us. At first, he seemed fine and was nodding like he was listening. I suggested we could both share our feelings without interrupting each other, and that's when things started going sideways. He immediately got this weird look on his face and asked if I was using psychology tricks on him. His tone completely changed. I tried to explain that I wasn't, that I just wanted us to have a good conversation where we both felt heard. I mentioned that maybe grief counseling could help him process everything with losing his grandmother, and he got so defensive. He told me therapy was for people who can't handle normal emotions and that he was dealing with things just fine, even though he clearly isn't. I tried again and said I've been feeling anxious around him lately, like I need to be super careful what I say, you guys. The look he gave me, it was like he became a completely different person. His eyes went cold and his body language changed. He stood up and said he'd give me space if that's what I wanted. Before I could explain that's not what I meant, he grabbed his jacket and left. I texted him that wasn't what I meant. I just wanted to talk, but he didn't respond. Then 20 minutes later, I get a text from his mom asking why I was abandoning her son during his time of grief. Like what? How did she even know we had a conversation? He must have called her immediately after leaving my apartment. And it gets worse. His mom called my mom. They exchanged numbers at the funeral and told her I was being unsupportive. So my well-meaning but kind of clueless mom decided to arrange this lunch with the four of us to smooth things over. I didn't want to go, but my mom insisted it would help. The lunch was a disaster. It started out okay, I guess, but then I mentioned I needed to leave by 3 because I had promised my friend Jess I'd be at her birthday dinner, which I had committed to weeks ago. Ryan immediately got this hurt look and told me I'd rather go party than support him. And then his mom made this super cutting comment about how my dad left when I was 12 and said some people just aren't raised to understand family commitment. I couldn't believe she said that. My mom actually defended me this time and told her that was completely uncalled for, and it basically turned into a public argument at the restaurant. It was mortifying, and we all left angry. And the server probably got a terrible tip because we all just threw some cash down and stormed out. Sorry, random server. Since then, Ryan's siblings have been texting me daily about family loyalty and how I need to be more understanding. His sister sent me a paragraph about how Ryan needs support, not criticism, which is so frustrating because I was trying to be supportive. Oh, and my sister, who has always been suspicious of Ryan to be honest, decided to do some social media digging and found Ryan's ex on Instagram. Apparently, she posted some vague stuff right after they broke up about finally escaping someone who twisted everything and how she was done being super careful around him. Same idea. That freaked me out. But here's the thing. Ryan can be so thoughtful sometimes. Like last winter when I had that really bad flu, he literally drove 2 hours to bring me homemade soup because I mentioned I was craving it. Who does that? That's the Ryan I fell for. I keep trying to reconcile these two different versions of him. I've noticed I'm starting to apologize for things that aren't even wrong. Like the other day, I texted that I'd be 5 minutes late meeting him for coffee and found myself writing this long explanation about traffic, even though 5 minutes is nothing. It reminds me so much of how I used to act around my dad when he was in one of his moods. And I've started noticing how Ryan subtly brings up my insecurities in arguments that have nothing to do with them. Like, we were disagreeing about what movie to watch, and he randomly mentioned my poor sense of direction. He told me it was just like when I got us lost going to that restaurant, that I never want to admit when I'm wrong. And I was sitting there thinking, what does that have to do with anything we're talking about? Also, I think something is off about his grandmother's story. I ran into his older brother at the grocery store yesterday. Super awkward. I tried to hide behind the cereal display, but he saw me lol. And he actually seemed concerned about me. He mentioned something like, Ryan always needs someone to regulate his moods, which seemed weird. And when I talked to his sister at the funeral, she gave a completely different story about his relationship with their grandmother than Ryan had told me. Oh, and Ryan had been planning this whole trip to take me to his family's lake house this summer, a place his grandmother apparently loved, but now he says he can't bear to go there. But then he also won't let anyone else in the family use it. His sister was complaining about this during that awful lunch. Anyway, I finally asked for a 2-week break to clear my head. He reluctantly agreed, but said I'm just like my dad, running away when things get complicated, which really bothered me. I've never told him the details about my dad leaving, just that my parents divorced when I was 12. So he's clearly been discussing my family trauma with his relatives, which feels like a huge violation. The break started 3 days ago, and he's been sending me these really confusing texts. 1 minute, he'll send something cold, like he sees my true colors now, and then literally hours later, he'll send something about missing our special moments together. It's giving me emotional whiplash. I've been stress baking like crazy, and now I have like 6 dozen cookies in my apartment. My roommate is thrilled, but my genes are not. Am I overreacting to all this, or am I missing some serious warning signs? I keep thinking about that weird comment from Ryan's cousin at the funeral. So you're still around. That's longer than the last one made it. And wondering what she meant. I'm honestly considering reaching out to his cousin to ask what she meant, but I'm not sure if that's crossing a line. On one hand, it feels like going behind his back. On the other hand, I feel like I need answers. I miss the good parts of our relationship so much. When things were good, they were really good. But at the same time, part of me feels relieved during this break, like I can finally breathe without analyzing everything I say or do. I hadn't realized how exhausting it was becoming. Now for the second update. So it's been about 2 months since my last post. I started therapy about 7 weeks ago, thanks to those of you who suggested it. My therapist has been helping me understand why I've spent most of my life over-explaining myself and trying to appease people who are upset. Turns out, growing up with a dad who could flip moods in an instant messes with your head. Who knew? The biggest thing I've realized is that I was walking around Ryan long before his grandmother died. I kept dismissing these little incidents because they seemed so minor at the time. Like that dinner I mentioned where he got upset when I was 15 minutes late, even though I texted him. He actually gave me the silent treatment for most of the night, and then made these little cutting comments about respect and time management. And there were so many other things I just ignored, like how he'd get really quiet and cold if I disagreed about what movie to watch, or how he'd bring up completely unrelated insecurities during arguments. My therapist pointed out that I've been feeling responsible for other people's emotions since I was a kid. My dad would get angry about something at work, and somehow, 12-year-old me thought it was my job to cheer him up or stay out of his way. And I carried that straight into my relationship with Ryan. Anyway, about 6 weeks after our break started, I decided to meet with Ryan's cousin, the one who made that weird comment at the funeral about me lasting longer than the last one. We got coffee, and holy shit, you guys, the stuff she told me. First, apparently Ryan's grandmother was basically his emotional referee since he was a kid. When he'd get into these moods where everything was someone else's fault, she was the only one who could talk him down. His cousin said the grandmother would pull him aside at family gatherings when he got like this and somehow calm him down. Second, his previous girlfriend apparently lasted 8 months before she broke things off after a similar pattern emerged. And get this, the family all labeled her as mentally unstable after the breakup because Ryan told them she was crazy and paranoid. Sound familiar? So after learning all this, I decided to meet with Ryan. We hadn't seen each other in about 6 weeks at this point. I suggested a neutral coffee shop downtown, thinking a public place would keep things civil. He showed up looking perfect, like freshly haircut, nice clothes, completely put together. He immediately handed me a small gift, this bracelet I had mentioned liking months ago. And then he told me how grief had temporarily changed him and how he wanted us to move forward together. I sat there listening, and it suddenly hit me that he wasn't actually apologizing for any specific things he'd done. It was all just vague references to not being himself and going through a tough time. When he finished, I took a deep breath and very gently mentioned what his cousin had told me about this being a pattern for him. You guys, his entire face just changed. Like, the smile completely disappeared. He went from charismatic boyfriend to ice cold in literally 2 seconds. He immediately accused me of conspiring with his family behind his back. I tried really hard to stay calm and just said I was trying to understand what happened between us. He called his cousin always jealous and a known liar, even though he'd never mentioned any issues with her before. When I didn't immediately back down or apologize, he stood up so abruptly his chair scraped loudly on the floor. Everyone in the coffee shop looked over. He just stared at me for a second and then stormed out, leaving me sitting there alone with his gift on the table. I felt so humiliated, but also relieved, like I could finally breathe again. The text messages started that night. At 3 a.m., I got this massive paragraph about my betrayal and inability to support him when he needed me, and how I was just like everyone else in his life. Then at 9 a.m. the next morning, he sent a completely normal text asking about weekend plans like nothing had happened. When I didn't respond, the texts got worse, alternating between anger and these weird attempts at affection. It reminded me of something my mom once told me about my dad, how he would rage at night, then wake up the next morning acting completely normal and expecting everyone to pretend nothing happened. I never really understood what she meant until now. The final straw came when Ryan showed up at my workplace unannounced. He brought his grandmother's locket as some kind of proof of commitment, his words. He started creating this whole scene in front of my coworkers about how I was abandoning him. When my boss stepped in to ask him to leave, Ryan accused him of always having a thing for me. My boss is literally happily married with 3 kids and has never been anything but professional. Security ended up escorting him out while he shouted that my daddy issues make it impossible for me to love anyone. I was mortified and shaking and cried in the bathroom for like 20 minutes. That night, he sent 47 messages. 47. I counted them. That's when I finally filed for a restraining order. His family initially blew up my phone, saying I was overreacting and he just loves you so much. But when I forwarded them screenshots of his messages, most of them backed off. His mom actually called me a few days later to apologize. She revealed this pattern had existed since he was a child, and they'd tried to get him help multiple times, but he always refused. And get this, his grandmother's will left Ryan considerably less money than his siblings, specifically citing concerns about his emotional regulation. No wonder he was extra angry around the funeral. He was dealing with that revelation too. About a month ago, Ryan's mother asked to meet with me privately. She looked completely exhausted. She handed me a letter that Ryan's grandmother had written to him, supposed to be delivered with the will. It basically expressed concern about his emotional patterns and urged him to get help. His mom admitted they've enabled his behavior for years out of guilt over the divorce. I asked why she was sharing this with me now, after initially attacking me. She said Ryan has now accused his entire family of conspiring against him. She apologized for blaming me and said the grandmother was the only one who could ever really manage him. I suggested family therapy, and she said they've tried to arrange it multiple times, but he refuses to participate. As we were leaving, she warned me that Ryan has been telling people I stole things from him. I didn't. I've never taken anything from him. So that's where things stand now. Ryan still occasionally creates new accounts to contact me after I block the previous ones. He keeps claiming I misunderstood everything and his family is manipulating me. Some mutual friends have taken his side and keep repeating that I abandoned him during grief. Therapy is helping me recognize that I didn't cause any of his behavior. The hardest part is that I still sometimes doubt myself, despite all the evidence. Like, was I really unsupportive? Could I have handled things differently? And I'm reluctantly dating again, but I find myself overthinking normal interactions. Like yesterday, this guy I've been seeing texted, "We need to talk," and my heart literally stopped until I realized he just wanted to discuss restaurant options for dinner. Oh, and I found the recipe for his grandmother's casserole tucked in my cookbook the other day and had this weird moment where I couldn't decide whether to keep it or throw it away. I ended up keeping it. The casserole wasn't the problem. What I've realized is that grief didn't create Ryan's behavior. It just removed the person who had been managing it. I ignored so many early warning signs because honestly, they felt familiar from my childhood. I still sometimes miss the good moments despite everything. I'll never know if I could have handled things differently, but I've finally started to believe that I wasn't the problem. Thanks again to everyone who commented on my previous posts. Even the harsh ones help me see things clearly. I'm not completely healed, but I'm getting there.